Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first topic in the self awareness series. My name is Dr. Mary Meduna-Gross, and I'm an executive well being coach focusing on the development of self leadership. And at the core of self leadership is self awareness. So if you haven't already checked out the explainer video at the top of this playlist, I highly encourage you to do so. It's going to set the stage for why we're focusing on self awareness, what it is, how to practice it. And in these videos, we're just going to dive right into a topic. But before we dive into our topic, I also want to remind you that I'm going to invite you to consider two different levels of engagement here. Because if you try to take on too much too fast, your nervous system is going to put up all of its blocks and it's going to feel like, oh, this doesn't work for me, or I don't like this. This doesn't feel good. So I want you to walk into this practice of self awareness, even if you have some experience with this already, just give yourself a little bit of grace period here. And so the first level of self-awareness is really just being aware, being that observer and watching yourself for what are those stories that I'm living by without an intent to change anything. Again, think about yourself as a leader coming into a new organization. You're going to take the first bit of time just to get to know the lay of the land. How do things operate here? And in this case, when we're asking how do things operate, what are those stories that I'm telling myself? Because that's how we operate. The second level then of engagement here is to then really start to tune into your inner chatter, start to tune into what is it that you're telling yourself. Reminding yourself you're not this inner chatter. It's just talking to you. It's helpful to think about this inner chatter as your inner child, a small, scared version of you that is doing everything that it can to keep you safe and comfortable. And so at level 2, what we're really doing is being willing to bring in that scared part of ourselves, no longer kicking it off to the side because it's too painful. We're bringing that back into ourselves because with the self-awareness practice, you're going to have the strength to do that. So today's topic is blaming and complaining. And uh, y- we all know what blaming is, right? It's saying, I've got a particular issue. Things aren't going the way that I want them to, and somebody else or something else is responsible for it. And so blaming is just putting the responsibility on someone else for something that you want. Complaining is very much the same way. It's really that act of expressing dissatisfaction or annoyance about something. It could be a situation, it could be a person or a circumstance, but it's usually about verbalizing this feeling or these frustrations. And so I'm curious to see how complaining shows up for you. You might see it as venting to friends, posting grievances on social media, or it could also be negative self talk. Maybe you're complaining to yourself. Maybe you're blaming yourself. Just be aware of those possibilities. See if that is showing up in your experience. Now, complaining is one of those perceptions, right? We're focusing on what is wrong rather than seeking solutions. And I think that we often get into this complaining piece because we really feel like we've exhausted everything that we know how to do or that we have the power to do. And what we want still isn't showing up for us. And so we've done everything that we know how to do. We're not getting the results we want. And so we're going to blame somebody or we're going to complain about it. Complaining is an expression of disempowerment, of feeling like a victim, although we wouldn't necessarily use that language because we're trying not to feel like a victim. Right. That all that frustration because things aren't going the way we want already kind of triggers our feelings of being a victim. And that's why we're uncomfortable to begin with. So again, watch yourself, just see how blaming and complaining shows up for you as you begin to develop this habit of self-awareness. Now, I also want to highlight that there's purposes for this, right? We everything we do has a purpose. And so what are some of the benefits that we might be getting out of complaining? Well, first of all, complaining helps us release that emotional energy. right? All that frustration about the disconnect between what you want and what you see available to you, um, brings up it's that trigger, right? It's that trigger point, and it triggers those feelings of frustration, of I'm gonna say inadequacy or inability to change the outcome. And so we build up this emotional energy. We don't like it. It doesn't feel good. And so talking about it gives us a way of releasing some of that energy, right? We talk about having bitch sessions or whatever. We just dump it all out, and then somehow we feel better. And in some ways, we do feel better, uh, but it doesn't really resolve the issue. So, um, helping us release emotional energy is one of the reasons why we engage in complaining. Another reason why we would or benefit that we get from complaining is this is a way of seeking connection, attention, and validation. Right? Because when we're in these places, when we're complaining, it's because we feel disempowered about something. And so we want to make sure that we've got some support with us. And maybe we just feel like we need a little bit of attention. We need to be validated that yes, you have done enough. You have done everything that you can to do. So maybe that is another reason why we engage in complaining. And the third reason I'm going to give here today about how we benefit from complaining is that it allows us to justify avoiding responsibility or resisting change. Um, it's a way of deflecting a responsibility of the situation onto somebody or something else. And so at the end of it all, really complaining is, what is that song, right? We're waiting on the world to change. We're waiting on somebody or something else to change so that we can feel better. So now we know kind of what blaming and complaining is, how we might be benefiting from it. Now let's just walk through a little bit about what practice around this might look like. So again, at level one, you are just observing to learn what is going on. So ask yourself, what is it that you complain about the most? Do you complain about the least? Are there particular people that you really like to complain to? And are there other people that you would never complain to? And ask yourself, what's the difference between these two people? What do I get from one that I don't get from another? What are the kinds of things that you like to complain about? Are these personal things? Are these physical things? Are these emotional things? Are these outcome related issues? What is it that you're complaining the most about? And then when you complain about these things, just get curious with yourself and wonder, what is it that I would like to see happen here? What is that desire at the root of this pain and frustration? Another question to ask yourself is, how do you feel after you've complained to somebody? Just tune into that. Do you feel better? Do you feel the same? Do you feel worse? What did complaining do for you? Another thing you might think about is, how long do you spend complaining? Is this something that you just kind of dump when you get in the door, or does it take hours for all of this to unfold and to come out of you? Just be curious about it. It doesn't mean anything unless you decide that it means something. You're just being curious about what is happening. Now, another thing, two more things that I'll talk about here at the observational level. You might ask yourself, uh, how often do the people around you complain, and how do they complain, and is there any similarities between what you see in their behavior patterns and your behavior patterns? And can you tell what does that complaining seem to do for them? And the reason I ask or suggest that you look at this from your peers' perspective is because we're very much like the people that we hang out with. That's why we hang out with them. We have a lot of overlap in our core beliefs and behaviors. That's why we get along together. So when you can start to see that in someone else, think about, how is this showing up for you? Because if you see it in someone else, there's some nugget of truth in that for you as well. And then the last thing just to ask yourself is, kind of, we went back earlier, how do you feel? But is this working for you? Does complaining work for you? Does blaming work for you? When does it hold you back? So those are some questions that will help you just look at this at that observational level. What is happening now? Level 2 is tuning into that at a deeper level, so we start to now bring this painful part of ourselves back into ourselves. And so again, what I'm gonna, invite you to do is to tune into this inner chatter with grace and compassion. You're listening to this voice in your head. It's not you. It's not true. It's just the truth that you're living by. So be curious about, what is the truth that I'm living by? And then, because you're at level 2 now, what is this truth I'm living by? And what is behind that? Right. So you might do like a just, what is true about that? What is true about that? And just keep asking yourself and go deeper with the questions. Another thing to ask yourself at this deeper level is, what is the pain that you're attempting to avoid by complaining about it? Where do you feel this in your body? If you could complain less, what would that do for you? And when you're ready to use the survival strategy in a way to come closer to yourself, give your inner adult permission to step in. Your inner adult can wrap its arms around this part of you that hurts and use the Ho'oponopono mantras of, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. So every time you tune into the self and you're listening intently with intention to yourself, it's, you're saying, I love you. First of all, first thing you should say to yourself. The second thing is, I'm sorry, right? I'm sorry that I've held on to these pains for so long. I'm so sorry that you've had to carry this along for so long. Please forgive me. And then thank you. The assumption is that the forgiveness has been accepted. We're accepting it for ourselves. Thank you. And we can move on. So that is your first challenge for this week, is just tuning into, how often do you blame and complain, and can you use that as a way now to come closer to yourself, to listen more deeply to yourself, to get to know yourself a little bit better, and to find where do you need more love. If you have any questions, or if there are uncomfortable feelings are coming up for you, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, Mary at plenavita.coach. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Thank you for being along for the ride, and I'm curious to hear how it goes for you. Be well.